Live from the SABC's Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg. Good evening to you and thanks for joining us this evening. My name is Vuyo Mvogo. On the show this evening, an NGO wants to prevent the election of former Defense Minister Nosiviwe Nqakula to the position of National Assembly Speaker. We speak to the man behind the move. After that, we put faces and voices to the numbers of government that the government released yesterday when it moved to defend its record in the aftermath of the Marikana massacre. 2 widows and a man who's been living with a bullet in his head for 9 years now tell their stories. And on a day, SABC News has been shining the light on the plight of South Africans who still have to suffer the indignity, humiliation and suffering of using pit latrines. We remind you of a call made by one of our compatriots on what we should be doing to highlight the plight of those who are less fortunate than most of us. The Watchdog starts now. Non-governmental organization, the New Nation Movement, together with several other citizens, have written a letter to the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Lechisa Tsenoli, asking him to take all reasonable steps to prevent the anticipated election tomorrow of former Defense Minister Nosiviwe Nqakula as the National Assembly Speaker. New Nation Executive Director Bulelani Mkhohliswa joins us now to talk to us about that move. Good evening, sir. Thank you very much for your time. The background to this move, before I ask you what it is exactly that you want to do.
Well, thank you for having us, and also welcome to your viewers. Well, the background to this is that when there was the cabinet reshuffle, there were some major decisions that were taken. One of them was taking Umamuthandi Mudise, who is the head of one of the arms of government, and taking them, from that position of being the Speaker of Parliament to being a Minister of Defense. So for us, I mean, that raised, questions and concerns to say, are we saying Umamuthandi is being demoted because, I mean, in layman's terms for us, our understanding is that if we are saying we have 3 arms of government that have equal status before the law and equal authority, when you take that head and bringing them, to the cabinet, it's and particularly, Parliament is supposed to provide oversight over the executive, so that's when the red flags began to flash. And fast forward, then some ordinary citizens then approached us because we don't want to take credit as well, because there were other people who actually started this process as ordinary citizens who wanted to exercise their constitutional right, and they engaged us and they said, look, what they are wanting to engage, they think it's similar to our court case that we took to the Constitutional Court of challenging the legitimacy of the electoral system. And we said it's definitely in line, and we definitely want to be part of that, that group that challenges and makes sure that when government takes decisions, they must be aware that it is us, the ordinary citizens, who actually have the authority, and they are representing our interests there. And when they are doing things that are raising concerns to us, we will engage them.
Now, you are asking Lechisa Tsenoli to do everything possible to stop tomorrow's election of the National Speaker, or more specifically to stop Nosiviwe Nqakula from being elected National Assembly Speaker. What happens if he says, no, sorry, I'm not going to listen to you?
Well, we are not naive at all. I think we have seen what the ruling party has done, particularly over the last 10 years, where they were just bulldozing decisions that were even not in the interest of the ordinary citizen. So even in this case, we do not necessarily think that the Deputy Speaker is going to listen to us. But what we are simply doing here is to exercise our constitutional right and to engage, Parliament to say we are here, we are quite clear what our constitutional rights are, and we want to exercise those rights. So we are not naive at all. But we're making a statement to say, government, you can do whatever you want, but be mindful that there are people who are going to hold you to account.
Now, perhaps before I get to this, who are the other citizens that you are talking about?
All right. The other one is Dr. J.J. Tabane and also Nolukhona Mnguni. These are the guys that we want to actually honor them, for being bold to take this step, because they are not acting as defenders of democracy, but they are actually defending democracy. So we honor them for that. So those are the guys that approached us, and we said, well, what they are raising is something that was of concern to us as well.
Now, come tomorrow, and the governing party, the ANC, goes ahead, proposes a name, and several parties, either some abstain, as the EFF has already indicated, others vote against. How will you then, or are you, maybe is what I should say, going to mobilize people and probably resources to then change that? Or are you saying that by merely registering a point, you will have achieved something, or at least done something that would send a message to South Africans that at least they are prepared, there are people who are prepared to, at the very least, say something?
Well, Vuyo, we are definitely taking the same approach that we took with the Constitutional Court matter around the legitimacy of the Electoral Act, where we were prepared to actually take it to the Constitutional Court and fight it until we see, the result that we think the Constitution is actually dictating to us. So even with tomorrow's matter, if the ANC does go ahead and the DA puts also their candidate, because I think from what we have read, the DA is also going to be putting forward their own candidate. And we know that DA is going to lose. So if tomorrow we end up having Umamunosviwe Mapisa Nakula as the new Speaker of Parliament, then we are going to go to phase 2 is going to kick in, where we're going to challenge this legally, just using our constitutional right. And I think, Vuyo, one of the critical points that we are wanting to register here is that part of the challenge that we have had over the years in this country is that South Africa, being a constitutional democracy, there seems to be those, and I think even Utatu Ukwete actually made this point when he was still the Secretary General of the ANC, that we actually need to go back to that parliamentary democracy where Parliament holds the greatest power, wields the greatest power. So there has been that conflation of roles between the executive and Parliament. But also there's even the political parties that are gazetted, as the political parties in Parliament. And then there are leaders who are outside of government, who now tend to dictate to those parties or to the individual or to the MPs who have sworn oath to the Constitution and to the nation, to uphold that Constitution and put the interests of the ordinary citizens ahead of everything else. So that's part of the challenge that we really want to engage, to say there needs to be that separation of those powers, where the party this partisan political system does not conflict. They must understand that when they have nominated a candidate to go to parliament, when that candidate gets to parliament, they are supposed to take off the head of the political party and put on the head of being a public representative. That is going to put the interests of the people ahead of everything else.
But then, the same party that deploys people to the executive is the one that, deploys people to the legislature. It's a winner-takes-all kind of, situation. How are you going to be able to demonstrate or prove, because, the ANC will come and say, well, this is how we deploy people, the least, but also, other people often gets thrown like lower down the list and brought up. They have all sorts of internal systems, that take care of this. What is the one, factor that you think will put you in good stead or will make the case for you? Because I was having conversations with other people. We're saying that, as things stand, you don't have, a solid case if you were to pursue your plan B, assuming that the ANC indeed goes ahead, which is what is most likely going to happen. You don't have solid ground on which to stand, certainly on this one.
Well, Vuyo, I think for us there are a number of reasons why we are taking this approach. First and foremost, as we had said already, it is to make a statement. We want to register our point to say that political parties we've allowed you for all these years to do. But the other part that we believe that it might give us an edge. And we are quite clear that you cannot dictate to the ANC as to how it should run its affairs. It's their internal affairs. But now the issue is that of separation of those powers. We are led, it is alleged that Utatu Gwede Mantashe was actually there with the chief whip of the ANC, Usis Penny, when they were addressing the caucus. And again, these are the issues that we're saying. Where do we see that separation of powers? Where you are actually referring to it as a winner-takes-all situation. And I think, it is also worth noting, Vuyo, that even before we had the Chief Justice, Mukhweng, occupying that office of the as the Chief Justice in the land, there was no sense of three different arms, of government until he got into the office. And we're not even saying he's an angel, but there was a clear indication of him looking at the interest of the people and saying the judiciary's role is this, and this is what we're going to do. So we're also hoping that we will get to a place where political parties are able to say, well, we recognize that separation of powers between the executive and the legislature, where the legislature is given its authority and allowed, to play that role of oversight effectively, so that we see less of the shenanigans that we're seeing within the executive.
We'll see how that goes. Bulelani Mkhohliswa, thank you very much for your time. He is the Executive Director of NGO, the New Nation Movement. They have written to the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly asking him to stop or prevent the election of former Defense Minister Nosiviwe Mngakula as National Assembly Speaker. After the break, we put faces and voices to the numbers that the government released yesterday when it moved to defend its record in the aftermath of the Marikana massacre. Two widows and a man who's been living with a bullet in his head for 9 years tell their stories. Don't go away. Welcome back. And as many of you will recall, the Solicitor General yesterday gave a detailed briefing about what government has been doing since the Marikana massacre about 9 years ago, what they have been doing to help the victims of the massacre. These include workers who were shot, families of people who died, but others who are still looking for one form of assistance or the other as a direct consequence of what happened back then 9 years ago. Now, Nosihle Mgwe's husband, Michael Mgwe, was a rock drill operator at the time of his passing. The couple have 2 children who are both of school age. She is our first guest. The other guest is Nosake Nokamba, whose husband, Ndandazo, was also a rock drill operator when he died on that fateful day 9 years ago. The other person we'll be speaking to is Lungisile Madwanzi, who is lucky to be alive. He was also a rock drill operator when he was shot in the head on the 16th of August 2012. The former NUM shop steward is living with the bullet that's still lodged in his head. Let's begin that conversation. Sis Nosihle, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for joining us this evening. Now, yesterday, as I was saying earlier, the Solicitor General gave a detailed briefing to journalists about the work that government has been doing to try and help people like you. Now, just from where you are sitting, have you received the kind of help that you were promised? Hi, Sis Nosihle, can you hear me? Oh, okay. It sounds like it's a little bit better now. Have you been helped? Have the promises that were made been fulfilled? Okay, we seem to have a problem with Sis Nosihle there. Her husband, Michael Mgwe, as I was saying, was a rock drill operator when he passed on. They have 2 children who are both of school going age. The other person we're still trying to get hold of is Nosake Nokamba, whose husband, Dandazo, was also a rock drill operator when he died on that day 9 years ago. That couple have 5 children together, and the man we're about to get hold of is Lungisile Matwanzi, who was also a rock drill operator. He was shot in the head on the 16th of August 2012. He is a former NUM shop steward who has been battling to get the attention of the authorities to his plight. He has not held a job since 2012. He was offered a 1-bedroom house to live in on the mine so that he could be closer to the mine's health amenities. But he is obviously battling to make ends meet, and he is going to tell us about his own story. We're going to take a quick ad break. Hopefully we will get our lines back on. So don't go away. Do stay with us. Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us. Lungisile Matwanzi was a rock drill operator. He got shot on the 16th of August 2012. An NUM shop steward at the time. He still has a bullet lodged in his head. and he is going to tell us his story. Pudlungsile, thanks very much for your time. Now, you haven't had a job since 2012. How have you been coping?
Yeah, since Nalimar. Njengoba ndadudula enhloko ndinembumbulu lapha enhloko, so ndicinga ubana uba yiyo le yabangela uba kube nangoku andisaphindile emsebenzini.
So I mean you haven't worked since. So how do you make ends meet now? Who supports you? I mean, where do you get food?
Baba ndiyazisapota ngoba ke le mali endiyisebenzisa, le mali ndiyirholayo imali le mali ndisapota ngayo imali ndiyirhola ikhampani. Andizitsheba ndandimele ngo-2012. So ndisaqhubeka nokurhola ngenxa yoba amagqwetha ethu akwazi ukungenela ne-union. Awunesivumelwano esithathwayo uba sizaqhubeka sirhola toti abe rayithi babuyele emsebenzini. Then ke thina ke sisekuloo ngxaki ethina nabanye. I'm sure noba siba yi-5 bandiphazame.
So after putting up a fight through your lawyers, you are still being paid until everyone is. Was there a time placed as to how long this arrangement can continue? Is our arrangement, or it's for as long as so until you get back to work, the company will continue to pay you. Is that the arrangement?
No, baba uMvoka andinokuxoka tata wam, ayizange sixelele uba izoba ixesha elingakanani, kodwa ngenxa yento yokuba kukhona abaye babuyele emsebenzini, ndicinga uba mhlawumbi nam xa sendiye ndarayithi mhlawumbi bazondinikeza ithuthi, because after batshintsha igama lemini kuthiwa isibane, kuba ke nyhani ke yiyo mina sayibona sibona isibane. Baye beza ootata besibane, ndicinga uba yangubaba uNorman Nxumalo, ubaba kuthiwa nguBheki Khumalo, ishari yam neshari endandisebenza kuyo kuthiwa ngu-Obedibis. And yeyona nto yayibazisa apha ke, ndicinga uba mna yeyona nto yabazisa apha kungenxa yento yoba babefuna usikhupha, befuna usikhupha qha ke indaba yethu sayithatha sayidlulisela kwi-News 24, sayibiza i-News 24, sabe sizibheka nsemagqwethini. So yastopha kanjalo, beza bengathi bona bengayazi le nto ngoba bathi bona bengayikhuphi kanjalo, abayazi isukaphi. Kodwa mna umuntu owayendifonele mna kwishaft yam uHendrick Mahopile oyi-HR yeshaft yam, owaye wandicacisela endlela uba ndive ikholi ibisuka kwenye yesekretari zam eqonde ekhaya, fika ekhaya ikholi ingaphenduli kakuhle, baphinde babuyela kum ke ngoku. Then mna bandifumana yandimi ke ngowenza ifolo apho balandelanga ifowuni. Ndifuna ukhona uba kwenzekani, bathini. Bayicacisa uHendrick Mahopile uba uthi masivuselele i-medicals. If uyapasa uya emgodini, if uyafeyila unika imali yakho uyagoduka.
Okay, so you reckon that you also owe this arrangement that you have now to, the work of your legal representatives, your union leaders, but also the media that also took up the case. Now, you're saying that Sibanye, representatives came to meet with you when the company took over from Lon Min. Would you say that Sibanye is, more sensitive to your plight compared to Lon Min?
Dada wam ngendlela endiyibona ngayo isibanye akho bunyani bupheleleyo, ngoba ngendlela yeza ngayo ndandicinga mhlawumbi izosixelela uba kahle kahle njengoba yiyo izawuthini ngathi, but ngendlela yeza ngayo yeza ibonakala uba akho bunyani bupheleleyo, ngoba yayicaca yazama ukuyibaleka le nto lisixotha. Yona isibanye ayifani loo mini, ayifani loo mini, ngoba ke loo mini ngesikhathi bikhona utata uBen Magara wayekhweza kwendlini wazothetha nam owaye-CEO yeloo mini. Nawo bazile, kodwa yona nto endibona iye yabazisa ngonxa babothuswa nje uba sayiveza into yoba bebefuna ukuyenza ngoku.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you think that you would still prefer Lon Min guys to Sibanye Stillwater. Is it only because the CEO visited you, so you appreciated that? Or are there other things that they have done?
No, Babamvoko, azikho tata wam ngoba azikho baba ngoba nangela xesha sisanda kulimala zange bekhona inkathalo. Umzekelo ukusuka endaweni endihlala kuyo ndiya kugqirha bendiya ngemali yam bendiye ndiqeshe imoto ngemali yam ndiyiholiswa nakhona ibincinci loo mali kuba besinikeza imali engaphelelanga ukusuka ngo-2012 ngo-2013. Umzekelo ukhona imoto ezihamba ama-branches iquantum ezimine nezihamba ii-patient kwiindawo ngeendawo sebakhona i-Bob mine khona ikariya kukhona i-Volunteer. Ingezi kum izondithatha laa moto leyo ndayicela ndasenza isicelo ndancama sendiso andinothi mayiloni mini kukhona into eyenzayo ebhetere ngoba nangeli xesha sisesibhedlela sakhutshwa singabikho rayithi ngendawo yokuba kwathiwa kuphele ii-medical zethu sabuya saziya ndaze endlini azohlala endlini ndiziva ngabikho rayithi.
So no difference really between the two companies. Now what's
no atata wami ngaphandle kokuvala emlonyeni awukho umahluko tata umvuka awukho ngoba ke nesibanye ithe ungena kwayo yatake over yaqhubeka yasiholisa ngendlela yokuqhubeka ngayo kodwa yona ngendlela ibize ngayo ibiphezu kwesikhuphu khade yabethwa ngoba le ndaba yethu iyazwa lihlabathi lonke namagqwetha abekhona singeke ne-union ingayivumeli lula loo nto leyo qha ngenxa yokuba ize i-powerful kune-influence ibanye kwi-union. Ingane abamhlawumbe kuyidelela okanye yiyenzeka ntoni ngoba iinkokheli zethu zazangangawo zinazo qha zohluleka. But ke nangoku not zohluleka ngoba zaqhubeka nango zasikela. Qha andiwazi amagunya asibanye nawo bayiwathatha apho ngoba into ezininzi iyazenza ngendlela yakho aba kunabasebenzi abaninzi sebemkhile apho elentinga uba pharmacy senabo andiyazi noba isibanye eze-operator noba ezokuphela abanemisebenzi abaninzi kakhulu abantu abakhutshela emisebenzini apho beshiya izimali zabo umntu athathe kwenye itsapha sekwenye indawo ashiya imali yakhe eminyaka ebeyisebenza.
Let's round off the conversation odlwana ndlebe lethu ukuba now la bullet isahleli kuwenhloko bathi ogqirha kuza kwenzeka ntoni okanye kungenzeka ntoni okanye izawuhlala unaphakade.
Tata Mvoko andinoxoka tata wam andithi njengoba ndalimala ndathathwa kulaa ndawo ndandiphila kuyo ndazesibhedlele sekhampani ndafike ndabhalisa ngendlela endibona ngayo uba ndandingazi nto ndeva ndiza kuthi kuplagwe amaphepha wethu thina silimeleyo nabaswelekileyo naboshiweyo. Ndandawulala eMilpark zange kubekho nento bayenzayo basi bandithumela erehab eRustenburg emveni uba ndiphumele eMilpark emveni uba ndiphume erehab eRustenburg ndabuyela esibhedlele ndihleli iinyanga ezimbalwa kwazofika enye i-organization yayisiwe Joburg kodwa yi-CSVR yiyo yandithatha ndithumela e-Potchefstroom esinye isibhedlele kweyi-veterans. Kulapho ndafike ndathekwa khona ndaxela into yokuba le bullet le ayizukwazi ukumuva ndifuna ke bayimuve nakwezinye izibhedlela babetsho njalo bathi awunomalulu uba bayimuve le bullet because ingandibulala kwindawo i-dangerous. Mhlawumbe esikhathini izawumuva ibe ngaphezu kwethambo then xa ibetween ithambo nentlonza le bakwazi ukuyi-operate bayikhuphe but andiboni kanjalo because isahlila entlokweni yam.
So okwangoku you're still not sure whether iyawuziphume that bullet will ever come out or it's something you'll have to live with for the rest of your life.
Andiboni that uba ingaphuma le bullet ngoba andiva nto mna xa kuphela into imane isenzeka kum endingazi uba yenziwa ntoni. Sometimes ndithi xa kutshisa ilanga ndive kunento engandiyavabrate ngaphezulu yabona ndithi zinyana yabona. Andiboni mna andazi mhlawumbi ingandilimaza ngoba ke abaye bayisho bathi ibullet iyakhona ngexesha mna ekuhambeni kwexesha imuve le ndawo imuve kwenye indawo so andazi abakuma ingenza njani because isentloko and ibetween isikhali nebrain. Yeah.
The story of Lungile Madwanzi, who was a rock drill operator when he was shot in the head on the 16th of August 2012, a shop steward at the time with the National Union of Mine Workers. As you heard there, that bullet that was lodged in his head is still there. He feels that, if he was discharged from hospital sooner, that he could, have been helped a lot earlier. However, his medical aid was terminated by the mine, and he has not had a job since 2012. was offered a one-bedroom house to live in on the mine so that he could be closer to the mine, which is where he still goes, for checkups and health amenities. But he doesn't know what is going to happen next. He still gets his money thanks to intervention by lawyers, but also media reports on their plight. Let's move now to our other two guests, Unosihle Mgweyi, who was a widow of Michael Mgweyi. Michael was also a rock drill operator when, at the time of his passing, the couple of two children who are both of school-going age. The company is promised to pay for the children's schooling. She's going to tell us. Nosihle Mgweyi, good evening. Tell us, abantwana basaya esikolweni?
Molweni tata. Yes, tata, abantwana basaya esikolweni.
Who's paying for their fees?
Oh, abantu abababhatalelayo babhatalelwa isisibanye ezithi i-loan mini ngoku ingasekho. Ngelaa xesha ibikade i-loan mini, then ukumka kwe-loan mini yasheka isibanye sithi take over ke ngoku.
And endlini uyaphangela when are you working?
Ewe ndiyasebenza tata.
Yeah, and of course needless to say, you support your family, but is there anything coming from the company that also helps you take care of your children?
Ayikho into engayibalula enothi suke ekampanini. Kahle ikhampani ayinanto yakhe yasenzela yona okanye mna yandenzela yona. Into nje eyandenzela yona kukuthi ithatha abantwana ibase esikolweni. Enye nenye into ayizange ibe nayo enye into eyenzayo. Njengoba like isake sayenza i-request kwikhampani yokuba no man abantwana basebancinci for into yobana bayohlala kuma-boarding school. Sicela ukubuyela emakhaya sirholiswe le mali ibifuna ngotata le 12,500 sisemakhayeni. But ikhampani ayizange ayikwazi ukuyenza loo nto, sanyamezela sahlala emsebenzini. Ayinayo ke enye into ayikhe yasenzela yona ikhampani.
So you've been, over the years, you've been asking them to basically give you that, the money that your husband or Michael was earning, so that you could sustain yourselves ekaya. Is that correct? That's what you've been asking for?
Yes.
And so far, anina akondonif manai or inkampani itayikwazi uyenza loo nto.
Azange ibe nayo nempendulo nje eyithethayo ba ingayenza loo nto, futhi ayithembisi nothembisa. Nje into esuke yayenza nje lesibanye ifika kwayo ukufika ifike utata uMathunjwa esenza izindlu for ii-families. Yafika yona yathi no, into ezawuyenza izawufike ithathe izindlu apho utata uMathunjwa aye angekanzi khona enze khona ezithi ezindlu ngoku bathethile notata uMathunjwa. So loo nto leyo yaye thina sizonye ifemeli yasiphatha kakubi loo nto ngoba asinanto thina esuka kwikhampani esingayibalula futhi ikhampani isenzele yona.
Le ndlu nihlala kuyo ngoku, the house you are living in, yekabani? Whose house is it?
Kuyo ngoku yindlu esiyirentayo esafike sayifumana apha emayini kwathiwa nazo zindlu siyarenta sihlala kuzo zindlu zemayini. Asinayo indlu sa-ofarishwa imayini ethi okay njengoba ke sithe zanofumana umsebenzi apha nisebenze nazo zindlu hlalani apha neefemeli zenu. Indlu safika njengabasebenzi bonke kwathiwa nazo zindlu rentani, zizindlu esirenta kuzo zemayini.
And this you're paying ngokwakho out of your own pocket. It's not like there's money you're getting from the company to help you pay rent. Now, did you get any help from the government?
Even the government, ayikho into endingayibalula ndithi isuka kwi-government. Inye nje u-government into owayenzayo sikhona isixhathezelo owasenzayo u-government nokuba siyakhala sithi sasingonelanga because sisuka kwiifemeli ezohlukene. Kweminye imizi ufumaniseke ukuthi efemelini kumele ufumane mhlawumbi abantu abangu-13 kuloo mali akunikeze yona. So ikhona nje loo nto yasuka ku-government kade ayingonelanga futhi.
Uyakwazi usixelela baninika malini, how much the government gave you?
Ngokufutshane tata ngicela ukuthi imfihlo yam leyo.
Oh.
Yeah, tata.
Okay. Now, nisebenzisana njani ke ngoku nizi family, because every time we cover the commemoration the commemorative events, niba kunye nonke as families with other widows as well. Nisebenzisana njani? How are the relations between all of you?
Yeah, ndingatsho tata ndithi siyasebenzisana elondlela, but asisebenzisani nje ngalaa ndlela siyazi ukuthi kunotata abawabonke ngo-2012, because ikhampani njengoba utata uMathunjwa ekwazi ukulungiselela i-commemoration nge-16, yona nge-17 yenze yayo futhi ecaleni. So ndingathi mna kukhona ungasebenzisani, but thina sizafamily ziyi-34 nge-16 sayibamba i-commemoration. So zikhona ke ifamily eziniyazi uba kunefamily ze-security abanye abakho babekhona nabo ekusolekeni basemarikana. So bona i-commemoration yabo baye bayibambe nge-17, abayibambi ngelanga thina sibamba ngayo i-16.
And nina babekusiya ngani, you would rather these events are combined, you have one event?
Uba bekusiya ngathi tata besifuna thina idibane lena ngoba ukufa kwakuyi-1, ukufa kanye kunye. So uba bekuya ngathi befuna uba le commemoration yenziwe endaweni eyi-1, sihlangane sisonke endaweni eyi-1, sihloniphe abantu bethu abangasekhoyo.
Okay. Mama masibulele torhwana ngexesha lakho. Usis Nosihle Mgweye, who is a widow to Michael, who was a rock drill operator, a loanman at the time of his passing. They have 2 children who are both of school-going age. She is concerned about how Sibanye Still Water continues to operate. They need more support, but also they would rather, these commemorative events. There's one commemorative event for where everyone, congregates and gets to remember and honor the people who died, including her husband. She did get some help. She has gotten some help from the government, but of course she was not keen to share with us how much that was or whatever the kind of support that they got from the government. We're going to move on now to Usisinosakhe Nokamba, who is also a widow. She Undandazo. Her late husband was also a rock drill operator at the time of his passing. They have 5 children together, the youngest of whom was 11 months old when their father died. Sisinosakhe, good evening. Siyabulela ngexesha lakho. See, uyasebenza ngoku, I understand. And is that the only source income eninayo as a family? You're not getting anything from the company?
No, that I couldn't discuss the company.
And nanizange naifumana, you never got anything from them?
Sakabala xesha sasifumana i-provident fund esibiza ngoba ke ibiyimali yabayeni bethu leyo, ayikho enye that.
And from urhulumente?
Yeah, urhulumente ukhe wasipha that imali ngo-2018.
Ikhona mhlawumbi isithembiso, is there any promise that in future they may add to what they gave you, or?
Asikho that esinye isithembiso. But into eyenzekileyo le mbuyekezo besiyifumene ngo-2018 ibiye loss of support. Ngoku sisalinde iclaim ye-general damages.
Yes.
Leyo siyikhalazelayo sisithi sacela ke kubameli bethu basiseri uba babuye back kurhulumente bayosicelela ngoba le mali incinci, 500,000 for ifamily yonke. Ayikho tata loo mali leyo. Kwezinye iifamily zabantu bayi-19, 13, 10. So xa isohlulwa loo mali leyo mhlawumbe umuntu angafumana 30,000 umuntu ongasoze aphinda benamyeni umuntu ongasoze aphinda benatata into wrong leyo tata ngokubona kwethu.
And xa nithetha namagqwetha enu ingathi kulaa mcimbi wesasixa izinto zingahamba njani ukubheka phambili?
Bathi ugovernment tata akavumi uthi umile kula 500,000 indlela nje engenye yokulungisa ingaba icourt nayo esingayazi nabo abangayazi bayizophuma nesigqibo esithini na.
Yeah, the Solicitor General did say that that's where things were. The lawyers representing you and a lot of other people are saying it should be more than, I think the demand is 1.5 million rands. We'll see how that goes. But noko nihleli kahle and ngaloo ntwana unayo, at least niyakwazi usurvive nabantwana.
Ewe tata siyakwazi usurvive ngoba ilingene ukutya ngoba siye kwagqirha sibathengele impahla. Enye into ayikho esinoyenza ngoba kaloku sinayo nemali yerent kwakule ndawo sihlala kuyo.
And ikhampani or urhulumente akabikho nto ivelayo about perhaps getting you a house or just making your life a little easier kwicala lohlala?
Ayikabikho tata into evela kurhulumente kangangoba utata umongameli siyamrhalela akhe azosibona adlulise nje ilizwi lovelwano nolizwi lokuxolisa nathi ke sikhuphe into esifanele uyikhuphe emlonyeni wethu siyibhekisa kuye ekudibaniseni kwethu amehlo. Asinawo amakhaya esinawo ngala senzelwe nguPresident Mathunjwa ngothando lwakhe.
If you were to get an opportunity to, if the president was indeed to come, which you're saying is your wish, what would you say to him?
Ndingamcela utata umongameli asiphe bekhona into asipha yona eyimali every month ukuze sikwazi ukushiya apha siyohlala ekhaya ngoba amakhaya wethu awanasidima nesidima sethu siphelile and soze siphile nalapha engqondweni nasemphefumulweni ngoba le ndawo sihleli kuyo yindawo apho kwafela khona abayeni bethu nabantwana bethu abumelanga uphinda bakhulele kwakuyo le ndawo.
Well, let's hope that one day he does indeed honor his own promise. It's a promise that the president made a couple of years ago, that he will one day visit the victims of the massacre, their families and loved ones, and everyone really who was involved in this rather tragic episode. Sibulele kusisino sakhe nokhamba. For the whole day today, SABC News has been shining the light on the plight of South Africans who still have to suffer the indignity, humiliation and suffering of using pit latrines. Now, some of you may recall how 2 weeks ago, which was the day before the matter once again went before court, here on the Watchdog, we dedicated the whole program to this very issue. We kicked off the show with an insert that was based on an interview I had with a visual artist who was asking his compatriots not to keep quiet. We're leaving you with that insert and asking you to think about the things that Mbongeni Buthelezi speaks about in this insert. From this amorphous heap of rubbish, Mbongeni Buthelezi sifts out all the alcohol and soft drinks, plastic wrappers everyone else throws away, and melts the waste material into beautiful art. His weapon of mass construction, an industrial hit gun. He has traveled the world showcasing the beauty of his skill and earning a living from it, while playing his part towards creating a better and cleaner earth. His latest and still unfinished project, though, is one of hell on earth. The plight of South African children who still have to endure the indignity of using pit latrines.
I was actually inspired by this story, that I saw in the media. I didn't know how to respond at first. But I knew that, you know, it's something that shouldn't have happened. As an artist, you know, as someone who is supposed to reflect on what is happening in the society, I took it upon myself to do something out of this story. A heartbreaking story, a painful story. You know, as a parent myself, you know, I just couldn't sit and fold my arms and say, let it go, just like any other stories. You know, few months later, after I saw this story, you know, I started to conceptualize, you know, to see how one, you know, could possibly take this story forward. Take the story forward in the sense that, you know, I wanted more people to know about this. Because at the end of the day, you know, the boy Michael Komape, who died in that horrible manner, you know, I was starting to wonder how many more Michaels, you know, out there that we might not know of. How many more parents who are crying today because of a similar story that happened to Michael. So I started, you know, putting things together, you know, and see how one could really make a story out of this. Because as an artist, I also regard myself as a storyteller, you know. I am one artist that believes in telling stories that come from the society where I'm coming from. I'm also a rural boy, you know. I was born in the rural setup. Later on came to the city, you know. So that combination for me, you know, the rural upbringing and the urban life that I tasted when I was 18 years old, I think it makes me fully understand exactly what happened, you know, in this particular story of Michael. And this is how it all started. And I'm hoping that, you know, with time, you know, people will be able to really start talking about this, because this is the whole idea. You know, the idea for me is to bring it up and make people talk about these things that are still haunting us, you know, 30 years in our new democracy.
Explain to us your choice of materials, corrugated iron sheets and toilet seats.
For me, the materials are very important. You know, with the corrugated iron symbolizing, you know, the toilet itself, you know, half-built toilet. The toilet seat, you know, it actually tells the story of the toilet. And if you actually look at these panels, what I've done also, I have used portraits of different children, not necessarily for Michael. I used 6 toilet seats on one panel, and I'm planning to have 10 of these panels to make up 60 of the artworks that are going to be part of this installation. The reason for that is actually very simple. I mean, the boy was 6 years old. The boy could have lived his life until he was 60. This is just my way of trying to project, you know, the possibility, you know, of how Michael could have lived his life. And at the bottom of that, I've got black portraits. And those black portraits are also part of the installation simply because they symbolize other Michaels out there that you might not know of now. And I'm pretty sure, you know, there are many more other Michaels, you know, that we will never hear about, which is something that literally kills me, you know, as a parent, as a citizen, you know, to see that, you know, I think responsibility was lost somewhere by someone, you know.